We're going to go through independent left.news for the evening edition for December 28th. Starting with the website at the top. We've got our nice handy little logo there. Our editor's note, since you may or may not have been to the site before. Welcome to independent left.news. Love you to subscribe by clicking the button above. And there's a subscribe button right there that'll pop up. Or you can scroll down below and there's another link down below. Or if you're on the site for about 10 seconds and haven't signed up before, it will pop up and actually invite you to sign up. So I'm going to go through a couple of the top headlines that I saw today. We're going to synopsize some of them, comment on some of them, see how this goes. So these are the top headlines. We've got David Sirota, we've got Glenn Greenwald, we've got Common Dreams, Mint Press News, Alan McLeod. This is an excellent piece right here. So we'll start that Republicans apparently are threatening to deny $2,000 checks to their own constituents, at least from the perspective of Sirota and Andrew Perez. And this is with the Daily Poster, excellent website. Great investigative journalism started this year by Sirota after Bernie gave up and conceded to Biden in April. So they're threatening to deny $2,000 checks. House Republicans and Mitch McConnell, of course, represent voters disproportionately struggling, yet they're going to block $2,000 survival checks. It's pretty gross. And of course, this was written about 8 hours ago. This was before the House passed the stimulus, or at least the $2,000 upgrade. However, it does sit at the Senate right now, and we'll see tomorrow morning what the Senate decides to do. So last week, they attempted to call his bluff, House Democrats, and increase the relief survival checks to $2,000, which House Republicans blocked. Okay, and it did pass today. However, if it passes, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell could kill the bill. Spectacle of Congress continuing to stall $2,000 survival checks during an economic emergency spotlights Trump's erratic behavior, Democrats' persistent austerity ideology, and the dysfunctionality of a government waiting until the last minute to hammer out 5,000-page emergency legislation in a matter of hours. Most important, the antics of House Republicans and McConnell illustrate how, despite all of Americans' pains to democracy, lawmakers ostensibly elected to represent us will routinely stomp on their own constituents. Of course, constituents are barely part of the media narrative anymore. Indeed, if you read national news, you'll almost never see a mention of those whom exactly these Republicans are supposed to be representing. For example, you'll never see mention of the fact that, according to research from the AFL-CIO political director, Michael Podhorzer, the majority of lawmakers in the House Republican Conference come from districts in the bottom two quintiles, meaning their constituents would particularly benefit from $2,000 checks. No surprise there. If anybody is watching live, I'd love to see you drop a comment in the chat, please. So, of course, Kentucky senator is going to potentially damage their prospects and his own constituents' prospects for getting the money. All right, I'm going to open this live as well and see what you guys see, because I have no idea. I only see what I see. So if I go videos, I go to my live. Their prospects and his own constituents' prospects for. Gonna tweet this out. see if anybody actually comes over. Pop this in Discord too. If you haven't been to the Discord, our Discord is independentleft.gg. Tons of different streamers, platforms, journalists. Completely unique way to consume the news, tweets, everything about your favorite streamers and news outlets. Just getting back to the Sirota article, Kentucky senator may deny aid to his own constituents. McConnell's role in this debacle cannot be overstated. Had he already signed on to the plan to increase the direct payments in the COVID deal, it would probably be a done deal, but so far he's been reticent, as millions of Americans are struggling to survive. Among those millions struggling to survive are hundreds of thousands of people in McConnell's own state of Kentucky, which is one of the poorest in the country. As such, it would particularly benefit from the $2,000 checks. As McConnell plays coy in Washington, his state is becoming a Dickensian nightmare. More than 700,000 Kentuckians live below the federal poverty line. And this is referenced with a talkpoverty.org article. These guys do their homework. During the COVID-19 panic, things have become downright dystopian. Louisville's ABC affiliate recently reported that an estimated 42% of Kentucky children live in renter households that were behind on rent and or did not get enough to eat. And 20% of adults with children in the household reported the children weren't eating enough because they couldn't afford enough food. According to census data, roughly 13% of adults in Kentucky are now suffering from food scarcity, meaning they either sometimes or often do not have enough food to eat. That number's increased nearly 40% since the start of the pandemic. Welcome, John. The median household income in Kentucky is about $52,000, and roughly 2/3 of all Kentucky households make less than $75K a year. That means the current proposal to boost $600 checks to $2,000 for families making $75K or less would provide additional emergency aid to people to most of the people in Senate Republican leaders' own state. In light of these figures, you would think that a lawmaker from a destitute state would be the single biggest champion of such an initiative. However, McConnell, and actually it's true that Rand Paul, the other senator, he's been screaming as well about checks. He doesn't want anybody to get any checks. Meanwhile, people in Australia have gotten 20 some odd $1,000 from their government in the same amount of time. What did they sneak peek in there that goes against the populace's interests? Claudio's asking. I don't know. Let's take a look. What goes against the populace's interests? Well, McConnell's certainly going against the populace's interests if he's blocking $2,000 survival checks, which we'll figure out what he's going to do tomorrow. He's led the fight to block direct aid to states, and that was another article from the Daily Poster from back in April. Let's take a look. So you said there was a sneak peek at the end of this article, or a sneak peek in there? Oh, what did they sneak in there? Oh, I'm sure there was a ton of stuff that they snuck in there. There's almost no doubt about that. As far as what was in the bill, we know that there was a ton of pork. It was the same bill that was signed on Thursday or on the 18th or on the 17th. And actually, there's a really interesting video from the Real News that was in the early edition today that had it was from Burn It Down with Kim Brown, and it was about an hour long, and it talked about just that. Some of the stuff that was in the bill that was ridiculous. That was a really interesting video. I highly recommend that one. Burn It Down with Kim Brown on The Real News. Apparently, she's getting censored and clapped by the YouTube censors as well. Rand Paul definitely needs to get his ass beat in front of a yard in his front yard again. That was pretty funny, but at the same time, it was assault. So I don't ever, especially on a live stream, encourage assault for sure, especially on my first one. But yeah, Rand Paul, I'll tell you, I was listening to him on Kyle Kalinski's podcast today from his live show this morning that he recorded, and just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. We don't need, saying that his constituents just don't need the money, and talking about this isn't a handout, and crazy. Again, facing potential wrath of voters back then, Trump was pushing for $1.8 trillion rescue package, not because he was a more moral person a couple months ago, but because he was trying to win re-election. And now he essentially has nothing to gain because he's a horrible human being. Same dynamic is also at play with McConnell, which is equally true. He is equally as loathsome, if not worse. Yes, we need to beat him in Minecraft. That's correct. We need to beat his ass in Minecraft. No, definitely. Claudia, I appreciate that. No, Rand Paul is definitely no Ron Paul. And yeah, in Minecraft. Okay, that's good advice from a fellow streamer to a rookie. I appreciate that. Everybody check out John's stream, The Good, the Bad, and the Internet as well. He streams on Sundays. I've actually watched, even though he comes at me for not doing so. So again, the same dynamic is at play with McConnell. Arguably, the only reason he even allowed the meager $900 billion stimulus with $600 survival checks. I love how he's calling them survival checks because that's really what they are. To pass through the upper chamber was because he was worried about Democratic consequences, specifically the runoff in Georgia. So that's really the only reason why we don't have anything. Otherwise, I think that McConnell would be doing exactly what he did to Obama, which is obstruct every single thing that he's ever done. Again, he can now play games with the $2,000 check initiative, knowing he won't be voted out because he did just win re-election. But if he does capitulate, it'll only be because he's afraid of losing those two runoff elections. And I think Warnock is ahead by a couple of points right now. Ossoff may be down by a couple of points, which is still unbelievable because they're so corrupt. Loeffler and Perdue both, just awful people. Ripping off constituents, ripping off donors. I don't understand. Again, Loeffler wasn't even elected. She was appointed by the governor. So, but the fact that even half the state voted for her is kind of frightening. So moving forward, there's a larger lesson here. In elite circles, there's this idea that America's problems are a product of politicians being too beholden to their constituents' whims, which supposedly creates gridlock as elected officials aim to placate their party's voters. This mythology, which is a modern-day version of the founders' fear of too much democracy, has been weaponized to promote ideas like supercommittees, presidential commissions, fast-track authorities, and strict budget rules, all designed to insulate decision-making from public pressure. Again, that's why I'm a little nervous about force the vote, because I think they're just going to railroad it the minute that it gets into committee, or they'll tank something on the floor, and they'll tuck something in or attach something to it that will make it unpalatable, and it won't be a straight up Medicare for all vote in the end, because they don't do that ever. I wish they did. So the answer really is going to be that we need to replace Nancy Pelosi. We need to get a new speaker. I've been paying attention to Dr. Joe Firestone, part of a group that's working to do that. So here, but this latest grotesquerie of House Republicans and McConnell threatening to deny $2,000 checks to their own constituents disproves their entire theory. It shows that a lack of democratic accountability is the problem. All right. So again, I highly support. I am a paid subscriber to the Daily Poster. Have been since day one. highly recommend subscribing if you can afford it, and you like David Sirota's work. They have broken some really big stories this year that have actually forced accountability and changes quickly in the system. So getting back to independent left, we'll get back to this Glenn Greenwald article talking about our tech overlords. The threat of authoritarianism in the U.S. is very real and has nothing to do with Donald Trump. And you can see that we've got CEOs of Facebook, Google, Tim Cook, and Jeff Bezos there. I'm sure Bill Gates is looming somewhere in this photo. Let's take a look at Greenwald's Substack. I have not subscribed to Greenwald, although I love his stuff. He's brilliant. Very pleased with the integrity he's shown and the way that he broke from The Intercept and the way that he exposed what Betsy Reed was doing. He's a good dude. Not everyone agrees with him, but you can see that he certainly gave up a lucrative position and comfort because he didn't like the way that he was being framed and what was going on. So can I make that bigger? How's that? Any better? At least you can see more of the screen. Let me also hide my bookmarks. Just even more. There you go. So the threat of authoritarianism in the U.S. is very real, has nothing to do with Trump. COVID-driven centralization of economic power and information control in the hands of a few corporate monopolies poses enduring threats to political freedom. Again, talking about how our corporate... Oh, it's Sundar Pichai. That's right, from Google. Asserting that Trump... I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read the whole thing. Again, people will not forgive weakness. Talking about the dynamics with the Tom Cotton article in the op-ed. Every prediction expressed by those who push this doomsday narrative of Trump as a rising dictator, usually with great profit for themselves, never materialized. Again, not that Trump is any kind of great guy, but every chance that he had to expand his powers, especially during COVID, he passed it off to the governors and made them fight each other, which wasn't good at all, but it wasn't authoritarian in any way. He was shirking responsibility because he didn't know what to do. His policies were declared by courts to be unconstitutional. He either revised them or withdrew them. No journalists were jailed for criticizing or reporting negatively on him, let alone killed, as was endlessly predicted and sometimes even implied. I don't know about jailed, but certainly there were a lot of journalists assaulted. There have been photojournalists that have been attacked repeatedly, mostly by the police, and mostly covering peaceful protests. So I'm not really sure exactly what he's talking about there. I mean, necessary, and then there's the whole Marshals thing. U.S. Marshals disappearing people off the street in Portland. Now, did it happen specifically to reporters? I watched a video of the Convo Couch getting hit with tear gas in the van that they were sitting in, covering a story outside Nancy Pelosi's house, I believe it was, in San Francisco. That was, I think, in April. Maybe it was a little bit later on in the summertime. Maybe it was around just after George Floyd. Bashing Trump was far more likely to yield best-selling books, social media stardom, blah, blah, blah. No Proud Boy insurrections or right-wing militias waging civil war in U.S. cities, except, again, maybe in Portland, where they were having minor rallies. Boastful and bizarre tweets aside, Trump's administration was far more a continuation of the U.S. political tradition than a radical departure from it. Again, not really sure that I agree with Glenn. Again, I don't always 100% agree with him, but I appreciate his integrity, and I believe that he believes what he's saying. Hysterical Trump is a despot script was all melodrama, a ploy for profits and ratings, and most of all, a potent instrument. Look, man, if you were a person of color or, an immigrant or a refugee or a trans person, I would highly, highly disagree with this position here. Enable those who have so much blood and economic destruction on their hands, not only to evade responsibility for what they did, but to rehabilitate themselves as the guardians of freedom and prosperity and ultimately catapult themselves back into power. Agreed that corporate Democrats are awful, and they certainly do have a ton of blood on their hands. I would say that Trump certainly does as well, even though he did not escalate any new wars. I believe that more civilians died under Trump than under Obama's 8 years. I could be wrong on that one. I wouldn't say that he defended the Proud Boys, but what he's saying is that the Proud Boys have not taken over any U.S. cities, and there have not been any insurrections other than the semi-occasional rally. Then they had the thing in Washington, D.C., where I think about 10,000 people, the million march that they were going to try to do there. I wouldn't say, again, that he's defending it. I would say that he's saying that people were over hyperbolizing the effect of what Trump was going to allow and what was going to happen under Trump, and that it was over aggrandized in the end and didn't quite materialize exactly as people had projected. Again, it was all melodrama, ploy for profits. Again, I disagree with all of that. And as of January 20th, the real despots in his mind, that's exactly where they'll reside. Again, escalating from 2 wars to 7. I understand where he's coming from. I just don't know, again, if I 100%. I know I don't agree with him 100%. Again, the Trump administration was by no means free of authoritarianism. Justice Department prosecuted journalist sources. White House often refused basic transparency. Basic transparency. They didn't have a press conference for a year, Glenn. Come on. War on terror and immigration detentions continued without due process. But largely, as I wrote in a Washington Post op-ed in late 2016, that the U.S. government itself is authoritarian under decades of bipartisan expansion of executive powers justified by a posture of endless war. There he's not wrong. Again, with rare exception, the lawless and power-abusing acts over the last 4 years were the ones that in here in the U.S. government and long preceded Trump, not the ones invented by him. Again, can't argue with that. To the extent that he was an authoritarian, he was in the way. He was one in the way that all U.S. presidents have been since the war on terror began, and more accurately, since the start of the Cold War and advent of the permanent national security state. What he was overly cruel. And no other U.S. president has been overly cruel toward American citizens and toward the American citizens that did not vote for him specifically. Even if they didn't like him, even if he didn't like them, he certainly acted as if he were their president. That's the biggest difference here. And again, the single most revealing narrative fraud, journalists, including former Obama aides, erupted in outrage on social media about the kids in cages again. Right, kids in cages. Yes, the Obama administration built the cages and started to house some children there. No question about it. Somebody posted a Mint Press article. Claudio. Excellent. Thank you. No, I've been reading Mint Press News. Excellent article. I'm sorry, I don't have a translator and I can't read the what you're posting because I only speak English. Apologize. Whoever's watching on Facebook doing that comment. I wonder if there's a way to show the comments live. Can I do that? Graphics, setup. Again, this is my first ever live stream, everyone, so I appreciate you bearing with me. I've never done this. Thought this would be fun. Thought I'd try something different. PolitiFact from 2014. saying that it's true. Espionage, use the Espionage Act to go after whistleblowers who leak to journalists more than all previous administrations combined. There's no question about that. That's 100% true. So again, the last gasp for those clinging to the Trump administration, the Trump is dictator fantasy. All right, whether Trump secretly harbored despotic ambitions is both unknowable and irrelevant. If he did, he never exhibited the slightest ability to carry them out or orchestrate a sustained commitment to executing a democracy-subverting plot. That, again, is completely untrue, okay? What did he do with the post office? What did he do with putting people in the heads of agencies with the specific intent to dismantle them from within? Mick Mulvaney, at OMB is the first one that comes into mind. And then he went ahead and put him in the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Or was it the reverse way? It was CFPB first, where he destroyed, and then he put his henchman, his deputy, which he wasn't allowed to appoint, but they just subverted that. So again, sustained commitment to executing a democracy subverting plot. What happened at the State Department, dude? Come on. How many State Department employees did they not backfill after they blew out every single diplomat that we had, which was historically never done before? Recalled every single diplomat worldwide and decided that he was the only person that anyone from any country would need to talk to because he was the authority for the United States. Come on, this is just garbage. All right. Again, I like Glenn. I like it when I disagree with him too. Most powerful institutions, the intelligence community, military brass, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, corporate media, opposed and subverted him from the start. Yes, sort of. But again, that's in some U.S. democracy, in whatever form it existed, Trump ascended to the presidency, will endure more or less unchanged once he leaves office. Again, also untrue. Also untrue, because he certainly has not left the country unchanged. He's brought out a lot more hate and derision right to the surface and made it okay again. Stuff that was not okay, basically for my entire lifetime, and I'm in my mid-40s, has been all of a sudden somehow normalized. So, again, whether the U.S. was a democracy in any meaningful sense prior to Trump had been the subject of substantial scholarly debate. And again, also true. Oligopoly, oligarchy, controlled by corporate interests and thanks to Citizens United, thanks to super PACs, thanks to the Koch brothers, thanks to the Heritage Foundation, and gosh, you can even go back all the way to the John Birch Society. Steve Bannon, Seb Gorka were exactly, had two prominent roles in the White House. John, Stephen Miller, okay? Come on. Again. And how much policy did that guy? And look, fucking Citizens United. Absolutely, Claudio, 100%. So again, the U.S. founders most certainly did not envision or desire economic egalitarianism, but probably most feared, long before lobbyists and candidate dependence on corporate super PACs, that economic inequality could become so severe, wealth concentrated in the hands of so few, that it would contaminate the political realm, where vast wealth disparities would be replicated, rendering political rights and legal equality illusory. Again, saying that our whole Congress and our whole government is bought and paid and was bought and paid for long before Trump. No arguing. Premises of pre-Trump debates over how grave a problem this is have been rendered utterly obsolete by the new realities of a COVID era. A combination of sustained lockdowns, massive state-mandated transfers of wealth to corporate elites in the name of legislative COVID relief, and a radically increased dependence on online activities has rendered corporate behemoths close to unchallengeable in terms of both economic and political power. Carlos, welcome, brother. Glad you can make it. The lockdowns from both the pandemic, not from both the lockdowns from the pandemic have ushered in a collapse of small business across the U.S. that's only further fortified the power of corporate giants. Totally agree. And oh my God, it's unbelievable. Amazon stock, Costco stock, all these big company stock is up insane amounts of money. Since we're talking, look at what Zoom stock has done. Have you anybody seen that? Check this out. Look what Zoom stock price is right now. Zoom stock price $352 a share. All right, and if I know we're here to talk politics news, but at the same time, if you look at their year to date. They started out this year in January. You could have bought their stock for as low as $68 a share. And then pandemic hit, and it's been climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. And all of a sudden in September, they announced their earnings from Q2. And then all of a sudden it went kaflooey. And now it's been coming back down a little bit because Microsoft is catching up. But look at, and this is just one example of a company that's just gone absolutely crazy since COVID started. They were actually one of the best positioned companies in the world, and you can't use them as the example for what's happened everywhere. But look at the companies that have profited, and look at what their value has done since. And meanwhile, 60% of all businesses, small businesses that had to be closed during the pandemic, are closed permanently, which is just awful. Again, so billionaires increased their wealth by more than 25%, by more than a quarter, the height of the crisis, just from April through July, which is nuts. I mean, look, the price of oil went to below zero, and all these guys with cash just scooped it all up because they were smart. I mean, there were bargain basement deals to be bought all across the market that now, I mean, if they flip any of this stuff, they're set for life and then some. It's pretty crazy. So the combined wealth of the world's super rich reached a new peak during the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you so much, Claudio. According to a study published by the consulting firm PricewaterhouseCoopers and the Swiss bank UBC on Wednesday, more than 2,000 billionaires around the world managed to amass fortunes totaling around $10.2 trillion. Just by July, surpassing the previous record of 8.9 reached in 2017. Think about that. And if each of them just had $1 billion, and again, I'm not looking to take anybody's money away, and they've earned the right to have, at $1 billion, you're good. You're good. Your family's good for life. You're flying private jets all over the world. You're eating caviar. You're doing whatever you want. You got 4 or 5 houses, more money than you know how to spend. You're giving money to charity. Every dollar that you make above that net worth, I mean, again, do better for the world. I mean, there's got to be ways that we can do this. Just awful. Again, I'm not looking to take anybody's money away from them, but we did have in the 1950s, when everyone talks about the way that economically this country prospered better than any other time in history, we did have a regressive tax where there was a 70% or 80% plus tax on above a certain income. And I think that is still incredibly popular, but the donors would never allow that to happen today. Again, yeah, 1 in 5 small businesses have closed. Restaurants, bars, beauty shops, other face-to-face contact, of course, have been hit hardest. And these are people that invested everything, and they've been left without anything. They've been given $600 after 9 months, and it's a joke. So again, the threat of authoritarianism, but the authoritarianism, and again, is where he's finally getting to his point. And this is a long article, and again, I love Glenn because he is really insightful. Most menacing is that all the primary beneficiaries are Silicon Valley giants, 3 of which, Facebook, Google, Amazon, are now classic monopolies. You can put Microsoft in there too, by the way. I don't know how much content Microsoft is necessarily owning or creating, but Amazon for sure, Facebook, Google with YouTube. Are they producing original content? Not that much, but they are the pipeline, the gateway, the search engine, the everything. But Microsoft with the operating system, with Teams now that was Skype, with their Office solution that is the Office solution for most of the Fortune 500, as well as their dynamic software. So stay-at-home orders, lockdown, social isolation have meant that we rely on Silicon Valley companies to conduct basic life functions more than ever before. Again, especially when things were locked down, and I know California's in lockdown right now. There are some states in lockdown. I'm in New Jersey. We are relatively open. I believe that our restaurants are at 25% capacity. Cases are increasing here just as they are everywhere. We order online from Amazon rather than shop. We conduct meetings online rather than meet in offices. I mean, look at the decrease in business travel. I used to travel for business once a month for about 3-4 days, all expensed on the company. Company is saving that money for sure, but also that money is not going back into the economy, and it's really hurting. So all of these service industries that depend upon business travel have certainly taken a gigantic hit, from airlines to hotels, and maybe he's going to talk about that, but that's certainly. We've been doing more takeout and delivery. I try to support the local restaurants in that way. I am not personally comfortable going to restaurants because I have read some studies about more of the spread happening at people that are eating out, and it makes sense because you're having contact with silverware, flatware, tables, chairs, where there are people. So we have chosen to do mostly takeout in order to support the restaurants. And tip heavily when we take out, but again, he's talking about how again we're so dependent and reliant on technology, especially now, for survival during the pandemic, and they're benefiting wildly. The fact that Bezos's wealth has doubled during the pandemic, he's now worth, I think, somewhere around 175 or 180 billion dollars. And Amazon stock went up yet again today, another 3.5%. So let's see. Carlos saying, "Oh my, Microsoft has gotten so many government deals during this time. It's nuts." Oh, yeah, yes, they certainly have. The VA is literally all Microsoft now, no doubt. And well, you can thank our new defense secretary, as well as our new Secretary of State, because Tony Blinken and Michelle Flournoy ran that super PAC that specifically was put together by Silicon Valley to lobby the defense industry in order to upgrade the technology and utilize their technology as a consortium. So again, this was like Amazon and Apple and Microsoft and all the biggest heavy tech giants essentially hired this firm that was assembled by Blinken and Flournoy and several other people. But those were two of the principals. And what they were selling essentially was access. Pretty gross. Microsoft is easing into hegemony. Maybe. That's good. Potentially. Again, that's getting into what's going to happen with Bill Gates and microchipping, and maybe. I don't know. I believe a lot of what Whitney Webb has to say. So if she's pretty on it. So tech companies more powerful than ever, not only because of their newly amassed wealth, but because they overwhelmingly supported the Democratic Party candidate. Yes. Okay. But this is another situation where Glenn actually went after Judd Legum at Popular Information over the weekend. I saw an article or a tweet thread from Judd backing up his research. And Glenn was saying that Judd was basically trying to spin a narrative that Facebook is suppressing left-wing sites and overly promoting right-wing sites for fear of being called out by Republicans, and he brought receipts. But Glenn Greenwald's like, yeah, but except all these companies are run by folks that support Democrats, like Sheryl Sandberg, who's a huge Democratic donor. And yeah, that's true, except that Sheryl Sandberg isn't the one that's actually pulling the trigger on the editing and on the censorship and on the deciding of which articles are, and things should and should not be censored, or however they're determining it. Sheryl Sandberg is not the one making those decisions. And apparently they have been hiring right-wing folks. And again, Judd Legume has that dead to rights. We can go into that later on. The Biden-Harris administration clearly intends to do a great deal for Silicon Valley. There's no doubt about that. Silicon Valley is well positioned to do a great deal for them in return, starting with the immense power over the flow of information and debate. I wonder if he even mentions, no, he hasn't mentioned our serious authoritarian tech facial recognition overlord, Palantir. The dominant strain of U.S. neoliberalism, the ruling coalition that has now consolidated power again, is authoritarianism. Can't argue with that. They view those who oppose them and reject their pieties as not as adversaries to be engaged, but as enemies, domestic terrorists, bigots, extremists, and violent inciters to be fired, censored, and silenced. That's a little bit over hyperbolizing, but okay. Julian Assange is sitting in prison right now in Belmarsh, so I can't really argue with you, although he was not put there by this administration. They did use the Espionage Act to go after journalists more than anyone. They have on their side, beyond the bulk of corporate media and the intelligence community in Wall Street, an unprecedentedly powerful consortium of tech monopolies willing and able to exert greater control over a population that has rarely, if ever, been so divided, drained, deprived, and anemic. Again, I agree with all of this. However, that consortium of tech monopolies also understands the psychology behind all of us. That technology also has surveillance capabilities into all of our homes. Every device that we have is basically run by one of those three companies: Facebook, Google, or Amazon. You've got Fire Sticks, we've got Alexa machines, we've got Google Homes, we've got iPhones, and Facebook is plugged into almost every single one of them and listening on top of all of that. I agree, Ron. Facebook, John, Facebook is rife with little proto-fascists. And actually, there's a really fascinating article from Judd at Popular Info about how Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire were able to figure out how to game the system and work with a bunch of different, a network of websites that automatically pushed out and promoted his stuff so that he would end up with 15 or 20 times the amount of views of any other content like it. It's insane. I don't know if you've ever seen exactly how much traffic Ben Shapiro gets on his Facebook page, but it's ridiculous. Like millions of views on just about every video. It's nobody knows how. Yeah, again, part of it is that they're paying for it, but part of it is that there are a network of Facebook pages that are immediately disseminating this stuff. And Judd caught it through Facebook link through Google AdWords link tracking, and then identified fascinating stuff here. Popular.info, which is one of my favorite websites, by the way. I will give them a tremendous shout out. Ben Shapiro, which started about 2 years ago by this guy Judd Legume, an amazing. I don't even know where he was writing. I think he was writing for Vice. Here, Facebook admits Ben Shapiro. Here we go. The dirty secret behind Ben Shapiro's extraordinary success on Facebook. All right. So look at this. Engagement per article for May. The Daily Wire was getting 53,000 likes, shares, likes and shares and comments versus the New York Times 3,800, CNN's 18,000. We're talking triple the amount of content, triple the amount of engagement as every mainstream left-wing outlet. Basically, more than all of them combined. Yeah, it's not even close. How insane is that? So what explains it? We revealed part of the answer last October, but the full story is much darker. They discovered a network of large Facebook pages, each built by exploiting racial bias, religious bigotry, and violence, systematically promote content from the Daily Wire. These pages, some of which have over 2 million followers, never disclose that they have a business relationship, but they all post content 10 or more times every day. They're essentially outlets for the Daily Wire. Moreover, these pages post the exact same content at the exact same time, which violates their terms of service, by the way, on Facebook. Yeah, it appears to violate their rules. Amazing that they've been doing it. And again, this was reported in July, and he just recently reported that they're still getting away with doing this somehow. Well, here you go. Mad World News, the new resistance, 2,800,000 followers. And again, this was from the summertime. Yeah, Shapiro grabbed the three wise men, the three dunce men that have figured out somehow how to game the system. Okay, they've got people that I give them credit for figuring out how to generate clicks. Tadhaps.com published a story on June 19th with this headline, and then it describes how a man named Mark Wilson was standing on the side of the road with his family waving the flags. According to Wilson, a man drove up and pointed a gun at him and other family members, then drove away without harming anyone. But that's not mentioned, and it's not mentioned, but the incident occurred 5 years ago. Look at that. Published it as if it happened today or in June. Also, fake news. But go ahead, right-wingers. Keep calling the left fake news. Yeah, unbelievable. Okay, so here, check this out. Look at the he's got screen caps with timestamps in different pages. He's got this guy freaking dead to rights, let me tell you. Why nobody covered this? That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. This was on top of Independent Left.News for July 18th or 19th or whenever he published it. So getting back to, because I only got through 2 stories already, and I don't even know how far in I am. About 40 minutes, I'm guessing. 45 minutes. New York lawmakers poised to pass nation's strongest eviction ban as millions face housing insecurity. This is a great piece from Common Dreams. I think it's Jake Johnson. Or is it Julia? They got some incredible writers over there. Again, so many excellent writers and journalists and streamers out there. I don't know what's happening. Am I freezing? Who are we talking about? Candace Owens. Eesh. How much traction has she gained? I don't know. He certainly would. I'd love to see him look into that and see exactly what's going on there. What happened with this Common Dreams article? I don't know. Looks like Common Dreams is having problems with their website. This one from Alan McLeod over at Mint Press News. That's another site that, man, talk about an underrated website that most people don't know about. They're definitely anti-imperialist. Definitely don't take money from corporate backing. Excellent stories. They do publish Whitney Webb occasionally. Candace Owens, I'll tell you, people on the right, and again, there's always going to be a market for people to do what Candace Owens is doing. This was an article that Alan published today. Killer cops, police killed over 1,000 Americans in 2020. Police violence off the charts compared to other developed countries, with homicides occurring at a per capita rate almost 70 times that of the UK and nearly 170 times more than Japan. And I have arguments with friends of mine that are staunch gun advocates, and I say, look, all the guns in the world that you got in your house isn't going to stop this. If anything, it's going to cause more. Okay. Over 1,000 Americans killed by police. American law enforcement officers have killed well over 1,000 people in 2020. Between January 1st and December 15th, the Mapping Police Violence Project has recorded 1,066 people killed nationwide at the hands of police, an average of around 3 killings per day. Despite the fact that 2020 has brought with it a pandemic forcing Americans to stay off the streets and presumably out of trouble, not everywhere though, as much as possible, there have only been 17 days recorded this year where the police did not kill someone. Oh my God. That is a ridiculous statistic. That's exactly right, Claudio. They do dominate Facebook. And one of the reasons why they dominate is because of their complaining and claiming that they're the victims of censorship. And I'm definitely for defunding the police. I support reallocating a large portion of their resources to allow them to focus on doing actual police work. Murders do happen, and they need to be investigated. Crimes do happen, and they need to be investigated. Do we need police to handle domestic disturbances? Absolutely not. In most cases, unless it involves a weapon. Do we need police to do truancy checks in schools? No. So yes, I think that we can vastly reallocate our resources. I mean, look at the budgets for some of these big city police departments. It's crazy. Not only that, but demilitarize the police. On top of the fact that we need to defund, but we also need to demilitarize, and maybe that needs to be part of the conversation. But again, I don't even want to talk about whether the left has never come for anyone's guns, though that's still been the constant narrative. That's why gun sales, I guarantee you, are going to increase again under Biden. They were at their highest under Obama. They actually decreased under Trump. And the gun manufacturers were in trouble and going out of business. I know that I think it was Smith & Wesson and a couple of other ones filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy just in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's hurt the NRA as well. Their funding has gone way down, which is awesome. Detrain the police, 100%, Claudio. You know, a lot of this does go back to the training, also to the hiring and screening process. I recently read another article about how there's one city that's now going to require a bachelor's degree from all the police. I don't think that education really ties necessarily to mindset, although education certainly helps. It's going to weed out the high school bullies for sure. But what you're going to have is just a bunch of overly educated guys that are beating the crap out of unarmed black people. We don't want to see that. So again, between January, so 17 days recorded this year. How is that possible? We had like 7 that had to have all been in March because everybody was staying in from March, from the time that I'll never forget. It was March 13th. It was March 12th. Rudy Gobert touched all the microphones at his press conference. And I turned to my wife and said, "Oh my God, what?" And then that was like 2 days before. And then all of a sudden he comes out the press conference like, "Yeah, I got it. It's serious." Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, holy crap. And that's when I knew that the world was about to shift. The next day, everybody pretty much went about their business as normal. We kept our kids home from daycare that day. And then everything went into full lockdown. I believe it was on the Saturday, the 14th. Project also compiled statistics on the racial backgrounds of the victims. Again, black people 3 times more likely than white people to be killed by police, more likely to be unarmed when it happens. Terrible. Yes, again, John, 17 years throughout the entire history of the United States, we've been at peace. Well, technically, again, this is where you get into this. Have we declared war? We've certainly been conducted actions, and our military is heavily active around the world. So yes, I would agree that, and again, it's not defense anymore. It's offense, because we haven't been attacked as a country by a foreign power, honestly, in 17 years at least, physically. Now, again, did Russia or China attack our elections? Well, nothing that forensic evidence can prove. I have a feeling it was Americans, personally, but that's another story for another day. Yeah, U.S. police violence off the charts in comparison to other developed countries. And it's got to be tough right now to be a cop. I in some way, look, the FTP and ACAB and look, they hear all that stuff. Number one, look, yes, they chose to be a cop. So, hey, at some point you got to take accountability for what you did, but they may not have gone in expecting that they were going to get this kind of treatment from the public when they did it 8, 10, 12, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, who knows? Or to have the good old boy network exposed the way that it has been. It's got to be tough. It's got to be tough right now to be a cop in 2020 in the United States. And they are feeling like, and again, I'm not actual numbers of imprisoned people in the U.S., it's well over 2 million, and it's like by far the number one number of people in prison in the U.S. 2.3, 2.4 million, somewhere around there. Okay, at the end of 2019, okay, 1.435 in state and federal, according to VERA, the Institute of Justice, vera.org. And they literally can break it down like by state. Population 2.2%, percentage as a percentage of the population, looking at the population of every state. It's not necessarily down to the exact number. But yeah, over 1 million people. And again, we have more people in jail than China. And they've got what? 8 times as many, 7 times as many people as we do, almost. Yeah, it's like the size of jeez. It's 1.5 million people. That's still just an insane amount. And a lot of them are nonviolent drug offenders that should not be there. So, again, getting back to our killer cops, police violence off the charts. Here's the mapping in 2020. Jeez. And it's literally showing it on a timeline where it's happening. It's happened in basically every state in the country that has any kind of significant population. It's happened in every major city, it looks like, just about. It's, wow. God, that is just like a stunning graphic. May 3rd was the deadliest day of the year. Police killing 9 men. And then 3 weeks later, they killed 7 more. Among them, George Floyd. Wow. How about that? Did you know that six other men were killed by police on the day that George Floyd was killed? That I did not know. Wow. Floyd would have likely been as anonymous as the other 1,065 names on the list had the incident not been caught on camera, gone viral, causing the worldwide uproar. 100%. Derek Chauvin, I Can't Breathe. Between 15 and 26 million Americans estimated to have attended at least one protest in subsequent weeks. Amazing. Again, that was 90 days into COVID. Pandemic was raging across the country. It's just remarkable. So as a response to the demonstration, Chauvin was arrested, charged with second-degree unintentional murder, second-degree manslaughter, released on bail. Only 1.7% of killer cops are ever charged with a felony. Look at that shit. Wow. Freaking terrible. Claudio, a lot of people believe that. Tower 7. I know. I got friends who were there. Survived it. Speak about it. It's a tough issue. Protesters sparked a nationwide debate about the role of police in society. Polls showing that up to 39% of the country approved the measure to defund the police. And again, the narrative that any politicians, I actually heard Jamal Bowman on that CNN interview where he did not commit to voting for Pelosi for speaker with Dana Bash. It was one of the first times I'd ever actually heard a sitting elected politician use the words defund the police, other than to say, oh, I don't support defund the police. But it became a narrative that the entire left politicians all supported it. And other than like Shama Swant, maybe a couple here and there, I did not really hear that narrative coming out of any left elected officials. Plenty of streamers and plenty of personalities and organizers and people on the left, activists and everyday people for sure, but certainly not coming out of the mouths of elected officials to the point where it could be hung on any Democrat that they specifically use that kind of rhetoric to scare their voters or to at all, as a matter of fact. It's just interesting. But again, that's been hung that the left all wants to defund the police, but I wish that were true. The left doesn't, at least not the left in U.S. politics, in elected officials. Despite being responsible for hundreds of brutality incidents during the subsequent protests and hundreds more attacks on journalists, police themselves claim to be under assault. See that? What I say? Police feel like they're under assault. Right? They're living in a surrounded by people who hate them. Well, guess what? That's been true for a long time. Maybe they didn't realize it. After a police officer was killed in Washington State in July, the institution's defenders suggested that the BLM protests were morally responsible. Anytime the anti-police rhetoric heats up, it sends a message that it's open season on law enforcement. Again, totally untrue. Totally untrue. Government's own data does not back that up. There you go. According to BLS, law enforcement is not particularly dangerous profession. Look at that. Loggers with more fatal injuries. Look at all these professions that are physically more dangerous with more fatalities per 100,000 workers than police officers. Wild. So 2020 presidential debate was colored by a debate around police violence. The incumbent Trump accusing Biden of being in the pockets of radical anti-police leftists. In reality, however, Biden appeared hesitant to criticize the police at all, initially suggesting only that they shoot suspects in the leg rather than the torso. I love that one. 78-year-old Delawarean also chose former prosecutor Kamala Harris, who has described herself as California's top cop when she was at AG. Former running mate, all of which suggests that it's likely unlikely that we will see a massive drop in police violence figures come 2021. Not only that, but if they decide to implement more lockdowns, you're going to see more protests and even more police violence. If we see continued police violence against unarmed citizens, specifically unarmed citizens of color, I think we're going to see even more of this, unfortunately. That's a chilling quote from Karl Rove. Karl Rove is an interesting character. He was actually really involved with the Ohio national presidential 2004 election that decided Bush over Kerry. And there's a really interesting anomaly that happened on election night 2004 that you might want to look into with Jennifer Cohn. She tweets extensively about that. There was a company called Smart Tech, and the servers went down on election night, but somehow the data was rerouted to these Smart Tech servers, which were not known to even be in existence as backups. John Kerry even recently admitted that he had his suspicions about Ohio. And this is not a neo-lib talking point. This is getting into election security type of stuff, and the fact that our election software has never been secure, has always been suspect. But it's just interesting because Karl Rove was actually involved back in the early 2000s. Kalita, good morning. How are you? Good to see you. Thank you for joining. So this is interesting. When landlords say "fuck you." So this is from Counterpunch. Again, so I'm already through the first 4 articles, and now, if anyone who knows who's been following independent left news, they know that I love me some Rich Medhurst. He's the reason why a lot of this, why I'm on Discord the way that I am, got me into Discord, setting up my own Discord server and engaging with a lot of the folks in his community, a couple of which I think are actually here right now. And so I gave him a prominent position. So what are we watching is usually a link to Rich's playlist. So whatever 100 videos, and you can literally stream 100 straight videos from him there. I also wanted to note that underneath this second strip of articles, so you've got the top 4 up top, you've got the Discord plugin, a list of some of the people that we feature, Rich's Square, and his video playlist. But then underneath, we've got this scroll bar of all these other videos that pull in from YouTube. And John knows because I think I featured some of his videos in there. But you've got Bo the Fifth Column in there. You've got Generational Change. You've got Kyle Kalinske, Franco with Jackson Hinkle earlier today. That was a good live stream talking about the Force the Vote and the protest that's going to be happening in D.C. So just wanted to let everyone know that, again, it's an easy way to find. You guys all probably have lists set up on YouTube, playlists and subscriptions and stuff. But this is an interesting way, a different way to find a lot of the videos. Another way would be in my Discord, which is at independentleft.gg. So when landlords say when landlords say "fuck you," again. So this is talking about how, in response to the state of Oregon's latest extension of the partial ban on evictions, the landlord lobby here is suing for 100% of back rent. Is this the Red House? Is that what this is about? This is no, it's often hard to see. Significant elements of the folks in power at various levels of government are keenly aware that we're in a crisis, and they want to avoid a total meltdown of social order. They often act blasé in order to in control of the situation, like they pretend that we all believe we live in a society governed by law, where all play by certain rules and that are more or less sacred. But really, they know they rule over a house of cards that sits on top of a powder keg, and there's a fire burning nearby, which they need to keep from the powder keg, and any notions under the rule of law are relatively worthless when millions of people are suddenly unable to house themselves, or put food on the table. Rent strike. I say rent suspension. More than a rent strike. We need to actually suspend rent. We need to make these homeowners whole, because it should not fall on them either. They have expenses. They have property taxes that are still due. So there would need to be some type of a property tax suspension in addition to a rent hike, because otherwise you're asking landowners, building owners, landlords, etc., to absorb that, and some just can't. So more progressive elements among the kleptocracy that passes itself off as government in this country is aware that what would truly be needed for the long-term social cohesion and long-term successful governance would involve a reversal of the ongoing stratification of society under monopoly capitalism that's been taking place for several decades. And that can begin with radical policies like government regulation of the cost of housing. I mean, think about just in Southern California, Carlos, I know you've talked about this, the number of units that are available versus the number of people that are sleeping on the streets. I mean, it's not that they don't have the inventory, they don't have the affordable inventory. But if we set some type of regulation of housing costs, we could fix that. At every level of government, they're bought and sold by corporate landlords at public auctions which we call elections. And even so, legislators and governors intelligent enough to see the crisis in front of them are unable to do what they know needs to be done. In the longer term, instituting effective rent control policies, and in the shorter term, doing things like canceling all rent and deferring all mortgage payments for the duration of the pandemic, like we just said. This is my first one, Lay Bones. This is my Virgin stream. So, welcome. I'm going through some articles. I'm probably going to, I've been doing this for about an hour already. So I'm probably going to cut out soon, but I did want to get through this Counterpunch article. David Rovics, he writes some pretty insightful stuff. Again, so hamstrung, knowing what they need to do, but also knowing who they actually work for, they can only delay the looming tsunami of evictions. Tsunami now being the preferred term in the business press to describe the meteorological category of the eviction crisis looming. Unbelievable. So they can only kick the can down the road in hopes that by sometime along the line down in 2021, that those that govern might come up with a plan to continue doing so. Unreal. In the meantime, here in Oregon, after days, Multnomah County extended the ban on most evictions to July 2nd. Hours after the state of Oregon extended the statewide ban in a similar but more watered-down fashion, the landlords filed suit. That is, several big property owners and the corporate lobbying arm, of course, Multifamily Northwest. And the gist of their suit is that if the partial eviction ban is to continue, then they want the state to cover 100% of unpaid rent. Why should we be making their profits whole? 7:10 there. Well, then good morning. You must be in Europe. Yeah, especially galling, given the lawsuit comes in response to efforts in part of the state legislature. So 80%, having to ask for state aid that would only cover 80% of the rent that they say they are owed was altogether too much of a burden and too much of a compromise. Wow. So essentially, they were going to be made whole. And they said, no, we want 100%. Bones, I'm in Jersey. Same here. Could be Africa. Sure. Could be anywhere. So the public message is don't institute rent control because that'll just make the housing crisis worse. And we want everybody housed, don't we? Wait a minute. Huh? Okay. As the housing crisis is worsened year by year with real rent control long ago was abolished in state after state because of the efforts of the landlord lobby, including our current sitting president, this argument becomes harder and harder to hold up, but that doesn't stop them from making it ad nauseum. Again, pandemic laid bare every neolib argument for all of their policies, exposed the fact that they don't help the masses, and like Jimmy Dore even says, if you've got 90 million people that have no health care or inadequate health care, it's a failed state. We're living in a failed state. It's crazy. In any case, whether the landlord lobby believe, this almost reminds me of the movie Thank You for Smoking. I was thinking of it this morning with Aaron Eckhart, where they talk about, hey, everybody needs a representative, everybody needs a lobbyist. Yes, tri-state area definitely represent. I'm in northern Jersey, too. Just over the border from Rockland County. They want to be able to charge whatever they want to charge, and then they'll make the argument that by doing so, this is in the end best for everyone. Yeah, of course, being able to charge whatever you want necessitates them also be, right near the George Washington Bridge, they built these 2 high-rise towers, and I believe that each one of the apartments is going for somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 a month for 2-bedroom apartments. Not even a 3-bedroom, a 2-bedroom. All right, Claudio, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to do this every night. We'll see how it goes. So to put this analysis of a lawsuit momentarily in Marxian economics speak that I learned during my 1 year of college, the landlord lobby believes in socializing their expenses and then sharing this burden among those least able to do so while maintaining laws and social norms in a way that they privatize all their profits. Again, and that's disaster capitalism, right? Privatize the profits, socialize the losses. There's a really good article. Again, David Rovix, songwriter, podcaster, part of Portland Emergency Eviction Response. Check this out, artistsforrentcontrol.org. He's got this pretty kick-ass website, Peer. So I'll give him a little bit of a shout out there. A really interesting, insightful article. Why we say don't pay. Talking about the Red House. By the way, I don't know if everyone's checked out Nikki at Backyard Politics. Mona. There's Mona. Of course Mona was going to be here. So if everyone's checked out Nikki at Backyard Politics, she's done a couple of really good videos about the Red House and the future of eviction defense and the residents that form that barricade around the people they were trying to evict. So Nikki may know David Rovix. I don't know if I can stream audio, but let's see. Tell me if you guys
discussed how President Trump
can you hear Klinsky?
Signed the COVID relief bill. Now I want to go ahead and show you what they were saying on CNN.
We love Mona.
Signed this bill. Because
Mona believed in me when no one else even knew who the hell I was.
The power and the scope of the media and how they can shape the discourse in this country.
Can you guys hear Kyle? I'm going to pause it until you tell me yes. Oh, awesome.
Look at where they put the bulk of the blame, and then we'll come back and I'll explain to you why I think they're missing the mark.
Let's get an update now on the fate of the COVID-19 relief bill, the threat of a government shutdown, and the hand-wringing up on Capitol Hill.
Oh, okay. It's not very loud. Okay.
Tracking all of this for us. Bill, the president's demand to increase stimulus checks.
Let's see if I can.
Members of his own party are a real bind. What's the latest?
That better?
Yeah, no question about it. Well, Wolf, the bill itself is physically on its way to the president. It is being flown as we speak to Florida for the president to decide what he wants.
Yeah, what he's talking about here. And Kyle goes
to come in at the last minute after.
Kyle goes into ripping the media for not ripping House Republicans for blocking this whole stimulus.
So, listen, is there a lot of blame to go around? And is there a lot of blame for Trump? Absolutely. I mean, I said it a million times, but if you're going to ask for that $2,000 payment instead of $600, you should have interjected yourself early on in the negotiations and been firm and said, we're not backing off of this. He could have done that, and he didn't do that. Instead, he let Mitch McConnell take the lead, Steve Mnuchin to a lesser extent. We got all these bills like the Manchin-McConnell bill or Manchin-Romney bill where they negotiated, and they had stimulus bills with no stimulus checks. There were like multiple versions proposed of a stimulus bill with no stimulus checks. And everybody acted like maybe this is going to be the one that gets passed. And then eventually we only got even $600 payments because Josh Hawley and Bernie Sanders were like, no, we want $1,200 payments. And so they were met halfway and they settled on $600. So for Trump to come in at the last minute after everything's negotiated and say $2,000 and get rid of the pork, I agree with $2,000 and getting rid of the pork, by the way, but you should have said something earlier on. You should have been involved earlier on, and he wasn't. So you could blame him for the timing. And there is an element of truth to the idea that he'll blow everything up since he got shafted and he lost the election. And so on the way out, he'll put his middle finger up to everybody and really cause trouble. There's no doubt about that.
Yep. That's pretty much what he's going to do. But at the same time,
but here's what I don't like about this clip. Why is it that the House Republicans always get away with no blame?
Yep.
The House Republicans are worse than Trump in this instance, guys.
Fuck
it's not
yeah.
even close. So when Trump gave a speech and said $2,000 payments and get rid of the poor, Nancy Pelosi responded, bet, $2,000 payments, we're on it. We're going to put it through the House right now. And she tried to do it through unanimous consent. And then a number of Republicans were like, no, I object. So why is the bulk of the conversation not, and why isn't the bulk of the blame, I should say, not at the feet of House Republicans? If House Republicans said, you know what, yeah, $2,000 payments. And if Donald Trump stood firm and said, Mitch McConnell, you're going to do these $2,000 payments. And if you don't, I'm going to burn the whole place down. We could have gotten $2,000 payments. If the House Republicans didn't object and then Trump put pressure on McConnell, we could have gotten $2,000 payments and have every Democrat vote for it. They would have. In the House, they would have. And then in the Senate, they would have. And add Josh Hawley. Okay, you could have got the $2,000 payments. You could have got the $2,000 payments. But instead of blaming House Republicans for blocking the $2,000 payments, they don't even really discuss the House Republicans.
Nice.
And they go right to, oh my God, does Trump understand the harm that's being caused here? Oh my God, this is all Trump's fault. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Again, there's plenty of blame for Trump. But in a rare instance where he actually comes up with a policy idea that's more beneficial to the American people, you think you should probably point that out, number one. And number two, blame the people who are blocking that. We could have gotten the $2,000 payments and that bill could have already been signed if it wasn't for the congressional Republicans. But somehow the congressional Republicans get away with this. And by the way, don't get me started. I know that
So, of course, he recorded earlier before that's now past the $2,000. It's past the House. So let's see what happens when it lands on McConnell's desk tomorrow. That's going to be really interesting. But he's 100% right, man. House Republicans, how these guys are getting a pass is absolutely insane. I'm in my mid-40s. Mix, by the way, to answer your question. So, yeah, the House passed the 2,000 today. It's gonna go to the Senate tomorrow. They're gonna vote for it. The asylum is definitely getting taken over. Oh, Daniel, hey, what's up, Dan? The deal. We got the deal here now. All right, this is getting crazy. Wow, this is fun. All right, so Kyle again is just railing again. Mainstream media not attacking corporate Republicans. That's like, okay. Hey, look at this. Who's this handsome guy right there? All right, look at these guys. So if you take a look again, I was showing everybody, if you scroll down on my website, and probably everybody who's on here has already been there, but if you scroll down a little bit further, there's a strip with all the different videos that I feature. The top 5 videos that I list are literally the top 5. And what's really cool is that I can actually organize and drag these and reorganize them to prioritize the videos that I think everybody wants to watch or needs to watch and needs to see. Same thing when it comes to the actual articles that you see here. I can rearrange and move these around, and that's what I do once the new edition is published in the morning. Also wanted to point out that there are a ton more articles than even you see here. You see that it says load more 58? There's literally 58 more articles underneath here, including a plugin for the podcast, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Everybody probably saw that. So the podcast, and then again, we've got 58 more articles, and you have to keep clicking. I usually just go right to the bottom, open them all up, and then I start scrolling up from the bottom to figure out what the best content is, push it up to the top, and that's how I make each edition. So we've got Kyle, we've got Jackson, Bo of the Fifth Column talking about Trump losing influence in the relief bill and how he failed and caved. And then we talk about shut down Amazon. This is another thing that was not covered at all. There was a protest outside Bezos's house in New York City. Christian Smalls was there. Status Quo had it. John Farina was on site.
We're in New York City on 5th Avenue and West 26th Street, here in front of Jeff Bezos' luxury apartment.
They fired him. He's here now. Chris, here you go. First off, I just want to say thank you all for showing up today in solidarity with the workers of Amazon. And what I would like to do, out of respect for those over 20,000, because I know those numbers are watered down. Amazon, just to give y'all some information, Amazon has over 1 million plus workers worldwide. Over 600,000 workers nationwide. No way only 20,000 top to bottom. No way. We're talking about 500,000 people. Yes, we are. It has to be more than that. Yes, we are. That's watered down. And right now I want to have a moment of silence for all of the people that got sick and died during COVID-19. Join me right now, please. Thank you.
All right, you know what? I've been doing this a while. It's getting late. I'm gonna kill it for tonight. I'm gonna do this again tomorrow. I had an awesome time doing this. This was a lot of fun. Again, I appreciate everybody coming. But Mix, again, appreciate you popping in. It's good to see you. Appreciate all your help. Everyone, really, this has been so much fun. We're definitely going to do this again. There's a Discord, independentleft.gg. Oh, okay. Let me put that back up for everyone that may be watching this later on. All right, everyone. Have a good night.